I transmigrated into a big heroine story as the wealthy, arrogant young master of a powerful family. Here, aside from the utterly shameless simp types, any male character is pretty much a villain. A father who only knows how to sire children but doesn't take care of them. A brother who's the typical spoiled rich kid. And the only people who help each other are the women. In short, if you don't follow the heroine's wishes, you're instantly branded as evil. I raised my arms high and shouted. After being poor for 22 years, I'm suddenly rich. Tonight, I'm getting a custom-made gold bracelet. With an excited heart and trembling hands, I checked my phone's remaining balance, just $20 left. And then, the automatic membership renewal took away 19 of those. That's when it hit me, the story had already concluded. And me. Because I was in love with the heroine but couldn't have her, I kept secretly sabotaging the male lead. Now, my family had been crushed and bankrupted by the male and female leads. While other second-generation rich kids enjoyed their wealth, I had no share of it. Now, with bankruptcy, I lost my money, but I was here, under the scorching sun, feeling dizzy from the heat. I angrily tossed aside the half-eaten lymph meat bun. Without hesitation, I threw myself in front of the male and female lead's car. The screech of the brakes echoed. As the car came to a halt, I crawled out from the bushes with a face twisted in anger. I said, "Nice driving skills. You managed to knock me 20 meters away with one hit." Chapter 1. The door of the Rolls-Royce opened, and the male and female leads, both decked out in high-end brands, appeared in front of me, graceful and elegant, a stark contrast to my disheveled appearance. The male lead, Makoto, wore a worried expression and pretended to show concern. "Mr. Wang, what happened to you? Why are you dressed like this?" Then, taking a step forward, he seemed ready to walk into the greenery to inspect my sorry state. I screamed, "Don't come closer. This is a crime scene. Don't mess with it. You'll affect the follow-up compensation process." Makoto's hand trembled. He hesitated but then retracted it, looking at me with an apologetic expression. "I know Mr. Wang holds a grudge against me, still thinking about Willow, but we truly love each other, and we're together now." Willow's disgust was barely contained as she rolled her eyes. "George, I guess even going bankrupt didn't teach you a lesson. What other dirty tricks are you planning to use on Makoto?" I had never tried to hurt a gentle and caring guy like him. It was just that after he found out about my engagement to Willow, he still ran over 50 kilometers every day to bring her breakfast from her favorite place. I had to punch him out. When I brought Willow back home, he casually sat in the back seat with her and jokingly asked me to drive. I opened the car door and dragged him out. When the two accidentally ended up on the same bed, he told me that if there was an issue, he would take it, and that he was serious about Willow. As the heroine's fiancé, I was simply doing what was right, pressuring Makoto. This wasn't being malicious, it was a righteous act, punishing evil in the name of justice. In this big heroine story, aside from the shameless simp types, every male character is a villain, with irresponsible fathers, spoiled younger brothers, and only the women helping each other. To put it simply, anyone who doesn't follow the heroine's wishes is branded as evil. Willow couldn't even be bothered to glance at me, clearly thinking my act of blocking their car was just the result of my unrequited love for her. She pulled Makoto and turned away. The Rolls-Royce faded into the distance, becoming a mere illusion. I then leisurely took out my phone and dialed 3 numbers. "Hello, I'm reporting an incident. Someone knocked me over, then got out and yelled at me before speeding off." Chapter 2. At the police station, Willow had returned again, her face full of indignation as she sat off to the side. A young officer couldn't help but scold her. "How old are you already? How could you hit someone and still try to flee? You've got money for a luxury car but not enough to compensate the victim. Do you even know that fleeing the scene is enough to get you detained or even jailed?" I took the chance to hold my forehead and said, my head spinning, "I feel like throwing up." The look on the female lead's face had gone beyond unpleasant. She glared at me with fury and after a long pause, forced out through clenched teeth, "George, do you think this will make me look at you even once?" The young officer had had enough. He said, "Hey, turn your head this way. You don't need to look at him. Look at this statement of forgiveness in my hand. If Mr. Wang doesn't sign it, you're going to jail." Willow froze slightly. Clearly, she hadn't realized how serious hit and run was. She tried to defend herself. "He did it on purpose." He jumped in front of the car. The officer asked, "Is there surveillance in that alley?" She answered, "No." He asked again, "Dashcam footage?" "It's broken," she replied. Naturally, the dashcam couldn't be checked. It was written in the book. The dashcam had just happened to be broken and hadn't been replaced yet. Willow was the heroine, and she had just kicked her father out to take over the Lu Group. If she went to jail, the board of directors would probably vote to dismiss her first thing tomorrow. Seeing there was no room to bargain, she bit her lip and said, "George, how much compensation do you want to sign the statement?" Rubbing my head, I said, My head really hurts, she said. 50,000, I said. Feels like a comminuted fracture in my skull, she said. 500,000, I replied. Maybe I should just stay in the hospital for 3 to 5 years, Willow finally said. 5 million, okay. That massive number made my head go dizzy. I stood up and bowed slightly. Miss Lou is so generous. I'll sign right away. If there's ever another accidental hit-and-run opportunity like this, make sure you call me. Chapter 3. Night fell. I dragged myself back to the urban village. Although I had prepared completely for that hit, carefully choosing an angle that let me fly into the greenbelt to soften the fall, I was still covered in bruises. Ever since my family went bankrupt, the once glamorous heir of a wealthy family had turned into public enemy number 1. The so-called friends who used to flatter me vanished, and every property under my name was auctioned off. Now, I could only rent a cramped space in the urban village. Urban village, an overcrowded and underdeveloped area within a city, usually inhabited by low-income residents, often former farmers or migrants. However, the downfall that rich heirs usually avoid like the plague was actually the kind of life I used to dream of before transmigrating. Before entering this book, I was an orphan, stumbling through life. I finally got into college, at the prime age when others freely enjoyed their youth. I was the only one dragging a woven sack, picking through every garbage bin on campus, scraping together money for next month's living expenses, until I died in a car accident and arrived in this world, carrying a bag of recyclables. I slowly climbed the stairs. After being poor for so many years, wherever I went, I'd pick up some cardboard and plastic bottles along the way. Once I had enough, I'd sell them. Life wasn't easy, every bit of extra income helped, but this open-for-all survival race had fierce competition. I didn't have much to show for today's haul. At the dim end of the stairwell, a woman with a cold and distant air stood outside my door. Upon seeing me, she spoke coldly. George, not even bankruptcy taught you a lesson. You still haunt Willow like a ghost. And now Makoto's on the verge of depression because of you. Go apologize to them in person. Otherwise, I'll never speak to you again. I looked at my phone, face scrunched in confusion, digging deep into my dusty memory, finally matching her face to a name. She was the girl I grew up with, my childhood sweetheart. Also the story's lovelorn second female lead, Maria. Before the male lead showed up, Maria and I were as close as siblings. And I was famously in love with Willow. But once the love-struck male lead Makoto appeared, my spot in the trio was taken over by him. I was the only one left, clinging stubbornly to memories of the past. Lazily, I lifted my eyelids and glanced at her, pausing at her chest. I was speechless. I felt ashamed. George, you're starving. You've reached the point where you instinctively check out someone's chest first. Seeing I didn't respond, Maria raised her voice. George, are you even listening to me? I cut her off. Give me that. She froze. Give you what? Without hesitation, I snatched the bottle from her hand. I poured the unfinished water into a flower pot, then skillfully crushed the bottle, and tossed it into the woven sack behind me. Only after wiping the sweat off my brow did I ask, what were you saying just now? Maria had a hard time dragging her eyes away from me. Then she flared up again. Makoto found birth control pills in Willow's purse. He felt completely betrayed. He nearly lost it. How can you be so despicable, always getting between them, making everyone sick to their stomach? Chapter 4. Maria might have forgotten something. I was actually Willow's true fiancé. Willow and I had been engaged since we were teenagers. Because of the marriage contract, when the Liu family's financial chain broke, the Wang family helped raise a huge sum to help them through the crisis. But then the male lead appeared, and everything turned upside down. He stood in front of me, heartbroken and stubborn, and questioned me. Mr. Wang, if you really love Willow, you wouldn't use money to break up me and Willow. Love is letting go. It's about supporting her. But what you're doing is objectifying women and showing no respect. His words immediately won over Willow's wavering heart. She glared at me with hatred and said, Makoto may be a bit poor, but in every other way, he's better than you. The Wang family's bankruptcy came swiftly. My parents couldn't handle the blow and both passed away. So, the package of birth control pills was intentionally left by me when I left the police station. It was to cause a quarrel between the male and female leads. Without these two, I would have been the heir to the Wang family. Just a little more, and I would have been living the life I dreamed of before, wealthy and loved, with both parents around. To take away my wealth was like digging up my ancestors' graves. The money that belongs to me, I will make sure to reclaim it, with interest. I stared at Maria's dissatisfied eyes and asked, how did you know Makoto almost couldn't take it anymore? She bit her lip and said, Makoto and Willow had an argument, and he ran off to a bar, drinking all night. He drunkenly called me, crying. Do you know? He was so drunk he couldn't say a single coherent sentence. He kept saying this must be a misunderstanding and told me not to come after you. I smiled. She told me not to come. But didn't she still come? She really was Willow's best friend, always acting like the best of friends with Willow. And yet, when the couple fought, she rushed to comfort the male lead, even saying I was the one standing in between them. Disgusting and shameless. She made it sound like she genuinely wished for Makoto and Willow to have a happy marriage, pretending to be so understanding. But really, isn't this just the classic green tea, pretentious coquette move? The book mentioned that Maria was Makoto's eternal regret, the one he couldn't have after choosing the female lead. I didn't get it. If she's such a regret, then why not let the male lead take Maria as one of his concubines? Arrange dates for her. Make sure to show her affection. That should settle all of Makoto's regrets, right? Maria stepped forward and grabbed my sleeve, saying, "George, you must go apologize to Makoto today." She was acting insane. Like a toxic mushroom had snuck into some cheap food in City A. I calmly peeled her hand off, tucked my woven bag away, and pointed at the shabby building behind me, asking, "Do you know where this is?" Maria snorted and said, "This is just the urban village. You're no longer the lofty Wang young master. Living here is the price you pay for bullying Makoto all these years." I nodded calmly. When dealing with someone, the first step is to bring them down to your level, then use your life experience to beat them. For instance, when it comes to ordering food, Maria's discount coupons will never be as inflated as mine. In the dark hallway, I lowered my brows and prepared myself. I kicked out at Maria, who was caught completely off guard. She screamed as she tumbled down the stairs, her left leg hitting the hard concrete, causing her to scream in pain, tears flowing. The motion-sensitive lights flickered on, illuminating my haughty gaze. With a voice as calm as could be, I said to her, "Maria, you need to understand. In the urban village, the security cameras are all broken." Chapter 5. The wailing ambulance whisked Maria away. Just before she was lifted into the vehicle, I heard the second female lead scream hysterically, "George, you just wait." Back in the urban village, I lay on the narrow, dimly lit bed, staring at a yellowish stain on the ceiling as I carefully recalled the plot of the book. After I moved into this urban village, the novel had already come to its perfect ending. The male and female leads were living happily ever after, soon to host a grand wedding, envied by all. Though the second female lead ended in regret, she still became a lingering sorrow in the hearts of countless readers. The evil male supporting character received the punishment he deserved, deeply satisfying. The female villain, who had opposed the leads, was trampled completely into the mud, stripped of any chance to rise again, and the author's pen stopped there. Abruptly and decisively, no one knew what would happen next. After such a seemingly perfect finale, I took a fierce bite of a freshly bought lymph meat bun. Note, lymph meat is a slang term for low-quality or questionable meat of suspicious origin, often associated with cheap street food. My mind lingered on the villains. In this world, I hadn't done anything wrong, merely defended my rights, yet I was branded as vicious and cast aside as cannon fodder for everyone else to step on. The female villain, too, just because she called out Willow's behavior in a business rivalry as cheating. She was labeled a pick-me who despised other women for male attention, and got viciously trampled by the leads. I threw the lymph meat bun aside and quickly ran through the villain's personal info in my head. Then, I hailed a cab and headed for Maria's house. Night had fallen. In the brightly lit old family home, Maria's leg had already been wrapped in a thick cast. Her petite body was locked into a large wheelchair, her face deathly pale, looking like she might turn into a zombie at any moment. When she saw me, she glared with frustration and said, "George, even if you've come to apologize, it's useless now. I was thinking, we've known each other for 20 years, so I was willing to give you a chance to turn over a new leaf. But now it's clear, you'll never change your vicious nature." I leaned forward and peeked around behind her, then said, "Who said I came to apologize? I just heard you hurt your leg, so I brought some fruit, your sister's favorites, to check in on her. By the way, where is your sister?" Chapter 6. The old mansion was empty. Only Maria's stunned face slowly froze in front of me. Only then did it dawn on me. After Maria's sister was fired by the Sioux Corporation, she had long been kicked out of the mansion. Where she lived now was probably not much better than my urban village. Urban village, see previous explanation, overcrowded, lower income area within the city, typically a symbol of decline for former elites, fellow outcasts. Whether cannon fodder or villains, are destined to fall hard. I picked up the fruit and turned to leave. Behind me, Maria was shouting something from her wheelchair, but I didn't catch it. Relying on faint memory, I found my way to a basement in an old residential complex in the capital. I knocked on the rotting door in front of me. The heavy curtains were drawn, and the room was shrouded in dim light. Empty bottles littered the floor, alongside an unfinished packet of pills. She wore a loose shirt, damp hair clinging to her cheeks, downing mouthfuls of hard liquor. There was nothing left of her former elegance or pride, only disheveled misery and bitter resentment. Her story had ended too. And her fate wasn't much better than mine. And all of it had begun with just one interview. When the host asked her opinion of Willow, she simply spoke the truth. She didn't respond directly, only frowned and said, "I don't quite understand what people mean by a strong, independent woman. If we swapped genders, if a man took money from his fiancée's family and then found a mistress, how would everyone react? To me, that's neither independent nor admirable." The next day, Willow published a long response post. "Sisters, don't be fooled by hollow labels of independence. True independence means not being defined by society's labels. It means defending your own rights and daring to say no in the face of inequality. You don't have to give up your rightful interests just to prove your independence. A truly outstanding independent woman doesn't just reject reliance. She learns to harness support, to coexist, to place herself at the center of the story, and make the world serve her. As for women who justify men's wrongdoing, they're pick-me girls who hate women from the inside out." After that, the female villain's public image kept spiraling downward, until Willow finally crushed her completely. Willow then smoothly handed the Sioux Corporation to her dear bestie, Maria. And so, the villain was discarded completely. Anna lazily lifted her eyelids and glanced at me. "Mr. Wong," she said, "did you come here just to laugh at me?" I shook my head and forced a smile. "I just brought some fruit you like. Came to check in on you." Anna's gaze drifted past the bag of apples and she said coldly, "Who's so malicious as to spread rumors I like apples?" I answered. "They're the cheapest," she said. "They're not sweet, not tart, and have no juice. Why would I like them?" I replied. "They're the cheapest," she said. "Don't you know these are the most useless fruits? Completely unremarkable." I said again. "They're the cheapest." Anna clammed up in frustration. After a moment, she frowned and picked up an apple, took a hard, reluctant bite. "There's a saying, you can't badmouth someone who feeds you." I leaned in, satisfied. "Villain, no. Miss Sue, would you like to take revenge?" The apple stuck in her throat. She snapped. "I've been kicked out of the Sue family. How would I even begin to get revenge?" I grabbed her by the collar and pulled her close. Locked eyes with her and growled, "Can you pull yourself together? You used to be proud and ambitious. Where's that courage you had when you fought against Willow? You ate my apple. Now get up and get to work." Anna froze. Her brilliant mind ran through the implications in half a second. Then her trembling hand started reaching toward her throat. Clearly intending to make herself throw up the apple, I swatted her hand away, grabbed a nearby bottle of water, forced it into her mouth, and made her gulp it down, pushing the apple firmly into her stomach. I said, "Lu Corporation's newly developed software is about to launch. I have a way to snatch it, make it ours. If we can get funding, we can use it to make a comeback." Anna choked on the water, nearly rolling her eyes, but as she listened, her gaze suddenly lit up. She said, "Mr. Wong, if you really can get the new software, I still have some money left. I'll invest it all." I frowned. A project this big would need at least tens of millions up front. A fallen heiress surviving on discount apples probably had, at most, a few thousand. Still, I asked with zero expectations, "How much money do you have left?" She held up a hand and said, 50 million. Chapter 7. I sighed and said, 5,000 definitely isn't enough. We still need, wait a second. I adjusted her face to face mine, stopping just 3 centimeters from her nose. I asked, "How much did you say you had?" She answered seriously, 50 million. When Willow started targeting me, I already had a feeling I'd be kicked out of the Sue family, so I quietly transferred some funds out of the company early on. Only then did I truly reevaluate this so-called villainess before me. She was the only one in the entire novel capable of contending with the female lead. If not for the plot armor shielding the protagonist, how could the villain possibly have lost? Here in this damp basement, she was like a venomous snake lying in wait, coiled, calculating, and ready to strike. Had I known she was this useful, I would have brought pricier fruit. With her capital injected into the project, I finally breathed a sigh of relief. I began examining the environment she was temporarily living in. Empty bottles were scattered all across the floor of the basement. As a broke workhorse, the sight made my heart flutter. I instinctively pulled open my woven sack, crouched down, and started tossing every bottle in, crushed the cans flat with practiced precision. Anna looked a little embarrassed. She reached out, trying to take the woven bag from me. She said, "I'll clean up. It's okay." Instinctively, I hid the bottles and cans behind my back. Why was she trying to steal them? I saw them first. I took a cautious step back and said, "They're mine. You can't take them." Anna's hand froze midair. After a moment, her eyes reddened. She turned her face away and said in a trembling voice, "Thank you. You're really kind to me, even helping me do chores like this. Since getting kicked out of the Sue family, you're the first person who's been this good to me." Her tears made no sense. Even when I was later sitting in a private lounge, I pressed my pocket and still didn't get it. Inside was the 17.5 yuan I'd just gotten from the recycling station. All I did was take some of her bottles. Why was she crying over that? Across from me, Uncle Lin was staring me down. Back when the Wang family was at its peak, our two families were close. But after the Wang family fell, he swiftly cut ties with us and aligned himself with the Liu family instead. Now, with his bloated belly, he lit a cigarette and said, "Mr. Wang, if you're asking for a favor, you should show a little humility." By the time I transmigrated into this novel, every plot point had been printed into my brain. Uncle Lin was a live-in son-in-law, culturally, a man who marries into a wealthier or more powerful wife's family and takes her surname or status. Using his in-laws' resources, he made a fortune, and then began collecting mistresses like trophies, claiming it was to reclaim his lost masculinity. But for now, he only dared do this behind closed doors. He wasn't yet strong enough to break away from his wife's family. In the not-so-spacious lounge, I burst into hearty laughter, then said, "Uncle Lin, I think you've misunderstood. I'm not here to negotiate with you. Today, I've come for one thing only, to threaten you. If you don't help me get Liu Corporation's new software, I'll make sure everyone, even the dogs in the capital, know you fathered 6 illegitimate children." Chapter 8. The highly anticipated new product Liu Corporation had been hyping for months was launched first, by me and Anna. It was only after the perfect ending of this novel that the cannon fodder and the villain finally did something truly evil for the first time in the entire story. Liu Corporation's stock price plummeted straight to the Earth's core, but Anna and I weren't that thrilled. The early stages of the project were burning through cash at lightning speed. Anna and I had invested our entire fortune, 55 million, yet it was only enough to sustain operations for a little over 10 days. Seeing the increasing red in Anna's eyes, I patted her comfortingly and said, "Don't worry, I've got a way to get investment." In the novel's extra chapter, it was briefly mentioned that a social gala would be held tomorrow. In high society, such occasions were where deals were made and power exchanged hands. That same extra told in a few words how the cannon fodder and villain ended up. I, unable to bear the fall from heaven to hell, ended my life in a cramped rental room. Anna, too, broke down one night, drank alone until her heart gave out, and wasn't found for over 10 days. But now, we were still alive, very much alive. Alive enough to throw wrenches in the male and female leads' smooth sailing. I snuck into the gala. Just as I was climbing over a short outer wall, a familiar and angry voice rang out behind me. "George, what are you doing here? That last time, when you kicked and broke my leg, we're not done." It was Maria, still in a wheelchair. Her left leg had only just been freed from its cast and couldn't yet bear weight. But after yelling, she seemed to suddenly remember something. Her frown eased. She said, "Could it be, life's gotten too hard, and you've finally come to your senses to apologize to Makoto? If you admit your mistakes and sincerely repent, I might forgive you, and even offer you a sum of money, so you can live out the rest of your life peacefully." Honestly, I didn't find my current life all that hard, compared to how I lived before I transmigrated. This was several leagues better. Maria, preoccupied with her leg injury lately, had no clue Anna and I had started a company. I figured, the longer her leg took to heal, the better. The Su family wouldn't notice Anna's movements that way. I carefully scanned the surroundings. The nearest security camera was hidden behind thick plane tree leaves. Maria and I were standing in a blind spot, and nearby, no one was around. I plastered on a smile, softened my tone a little, and asked, "Maria, which leg did you injure again last time?" Maria relaxed visibly. She pouted and said, "How can you be so forgetful? It was my left leg, remember? Whatever, as long as you're here to apologize, I'll reluctantly forgive everything you've done." The next second, I raised my leg, and viciously kicked her perfectly fine right leg. Maria screamed from the pain. She tumbled out of her wheelchair and the heavy chair came crashing down on top of her. All she could do was groan. My mood soared. Finally, sweet vengeance for the villain. The Su family should have belonged to Anna in the first place. Ever since her mother passed away and Maria's mother, the mistress, took her place in the family, Anna's shares were gradually transferred to her half-sister. Thus, a villain with a tragic childhood was born. I patted off the dirt from my clothes, then landed a precise follow-up kick to Maria's right leg, shoving her groans right back down her throat. Then I headed straight for the 3rd floor of the gala. The male lead was currently in a private lounge upstairs. In this big heroine story, the love-struck, loyal puppy male lead always put the female lead first, no matter the occasion. Makoto maintained his image as the perfect husband-to-be. When he saw me, he was visibly startled, then sneered, "George, I know you're still bitter, but what's bitterness going to change? It won't be long now. Willow and I are getting married." Chapter 9. He thought I had come to beg Willow to take me back. After all, in everyone's eyes, I was madly in love with her. But now, the only thing on my mind was making money. Specifically, making money off the male and female leads. There was a glimmer of cunning in Makoto's eyes. He had once used the excuse that I was bullying him, to take full advantage of me, and now, he was playing the same trick again, trying to completely win over Willow's heart, though the male and female leads were already together. The first challenge they faced was the inevitable clash of class. As time went on, the cracks between them began to show. And their relationship was far from what it once was. Makoto had proposed 3 times, and each time, Willow brushed it off with vague responses. In every version of the story, the ending always stopped at the moment right before the leads got married. As for whether they lived happily ever after, the author never wrote a word more. Standing by the low balcony of the 3rd-floor private lounge, Makoto grabbed my arm, eyes gleaming with anticipation. I knew this look all too well. He had framed me countless times in the past. He'd time everything perfectly, waiting until Willow arrived to tearfully beg me to let him go, even going so far as to punch himself a few times. Then pretend to be strong and say to the female lead, "It's okay, Willow. If hitting me a few times can help Mr. Wong feel better, then I deserve it." Pathetic. That little trick. I'd seen it 1,000 times. I didn't know how to invest. I didn't know business. The only thing I did know was how to drag someone down to my level, then use my rich life experience to crush them. The balcony was on the 3rd floor. When I looked down, I realized it was quite high, even higher than the 5th floor of a typical building. Not far away, I saw Willow walking this way. I lowered my voice, curved my lips into a sinister smile, and asked, "Guess what'll happen if I fall from here?" Makoto's expression instantly changed, and in the next second, under his shocked and terrified gaze, I violently shook off his grip, and hurled myself backward, in a way that looked exactly like he had pushed me, falling from the 3rd floor at full speed. Screams erupted below. In that fleeting descent, I even heard someone yell, "Makoto just killed someone." I saw it with my own eyes. He pushed Mr. Wong off the balcony. "Call the police." Makoto's horrified face shrank in my vision as I plummeted. The wind howled past my ears. And then, with perfect timing, I splashed down into a swimming pool on the 1st-floor terrace. When the police arrived, I was soaked head to toe, shivering non-stop, looking like I had just escaped death itself, even better at playing the victim than the male lead. At that moment, my performance as the vicious supporting male character was absolutely flawless. Makoto shook his head like a madman, yelling, "It wasn't me." He jumped. He set me up. Willow bit her lip, saying nothing. But the murmurs of the surrounding guests were clearly making her uncomfortable. She finally said, "Makoto, I saw it with my own eyes. You pushed George off the balcony. If it weren't for the swimming pool breaking his fall from that height, he could have died. How did you become like this?" That last line drained the color from Makoto's lips in an instant. Funny, because once upon a time, that same line had been said to me. Every time she was convinced I was setting Makoto up, she'd always look at me with disappointment and say, "George, how did you become like this? Where did the kind, honest big brother Wong go?" Now, the boomerang had finally swung back and stabbed Makoto straight through the heart. Willow turned to me, her face showing a hint of guilt. She pressed her lips together and said, "George, I'm sorry, but the Lu Corporation's stock has been dropping lately. We can't afford another scandal. How about we settle this privately? I'm willing to compensate you on his behalf." Chapter 10. Back when Makoto used to frame me, Willow would always throw out something completely unreasonable like, "George, how could you be so despicable?" But now that it was the male lead's turn, all she cared about was sweeping the scandal under the rug. I knew Willow had been mentally and emotionally drained lately. The newly developed project had been stolen, and the board of directors was grilling her relentlessly. Uncle Lin, who was involved, played the part of an outraged shareholder to perfection, spitting accusations with righteous fury while secretly being the real culprit. Willow still had no idea who the mole was, and even less of a clue that the company suddenly appearing out of nowhere was founded by me and Anna, with her grand wedding to Makoto fast approaching. She couldn't afford any more negative press. At this point, I had completely mastered Makoto's signature move, playing the pitiful little victim. So I clutched my forehead at just the right time. The fading bruise from the previous car accident was still faintly visible near my temple. I sighed and said, "My head really hurts. Falling from that height, what if I have a concussion from the impact?" She frowned and said, 300,000. I added, "My lungs hurt too. I swallowed so much pool water I don't think I'll survive till tomorrow." She replied, 3 million. The price was going up too slowly. Annoying. I pulled out my waterproof wrapped phone from my pocket and said with tragic resolve, "I'm just a disposable side character. Might as well post online and ask what to do when the male lead attempts murder." "Don't." Willow interrupted, brows furrowed. 30 million. That payout would practically slash a third of Lu Corporation's available cash flow. I instantly pocketed my phone and bowed politely. Miss Lu, you're so generous. If there's ever another near-murder opportunity, remember to invite me again. As soon as the money hit my account, I was about to leave, grinning ear to ear, when a familiar voice shouted from the crowd, "George." In the next second, a figure crashed into my arms. It was Anna. God knows where she came from, but her face was filled with anxious worry as she scanned me up and down. She asked, "You fell from that high up, are you okay?" I cut her off, excitedly whispering in her ear, "Lu family just paid 30 million in compensation. We've got investment capital now. I'll buy you expensive fruit tonight." But Anna didn't show the joy I expected. Instead, she looked upset, cheeks puffed in anger. "What's more important, money or your life?" she scolded. "Falling from that height, you could have died. Do you have any idea how worried I was? I don't want expensive fruit. There's only one kind I love in this world, and it's apples." She leaned against me, hugging me tightly. My entire body went stiff like a statue. No one had ever said anything like that to me before. In my 20 years of trudging through life, it had been nothing but barren loneliness. The only things etched into my bones were hunger and poverty. The one fruit I'd eaten the most in my short past life was apples, cheap and filling. Sometimes, if I was lucky, I'd find a whole apple while digging through cardboard boxes. But now, for the first time, something warm shone into the darkness of my life. It stung, just a little. Even with Anna holding me so tightly, I didn't know where to put my stiff hands. I didn't know whether to push her away, or hug her back just as tightly. Then I heard the faintest whisper in my ear, "George, you're all I have left in this world. Promise me, stay with me, okay?" Pressed so closely together, I could feel Anna trembling, and honestly, in this unfamiliar world, she was all I had too. Chapter 11. A sharp female voice suddenly cut through the moment. "George, what's your relationship with her?" Willow's face flushed deep red. That look, any outsider would have thought her husband had brought a mistress to humiliate her. I frowned. She was no longer my fiancée. I was busy chasing my second chance at life. Who I hugged was none of her business. Before I could answer, Anna leaned over and pitifully asked, "George, can I put an extra bed in your room?" To save money, Anna had already moved into my rented apartment. I slept in the bedroom. She took the couch. It really wasn't ideal, thinking of the 30 million that just hit my account. I patted Anna's back grandly and said, "Sure, tonight we're buying a big, solid bed, the kind that won't collapse, no matter how much we bounce on it." The people nearby let out teasing whistles. The way they looked at us was less than innocent. I took Anna's hand and led her away, completely missing how Willow's expression was turning darker and darker. Outside the hotel, an ambulance arrived with sirens blaring. Anna saw it and immediately shoved me toward it, saying, "Go to the hospital, get checked out. What if you've got some hidden injury?" As the ambulance pulled away, lights flashing, a calm young nurse casually pulled out a form and said, "You're the one who called about a broken leg, right? Make sure you get an X-ray once we get to the hospital." I was speechless. So, the ambulance wasn't even meant for me. Then, who the hell was it here for? Chapter 12. With the 30 million injection into the company, our project finally lasted long enough to turn a profit. Anna truly lived up to being the female lead's greatest rival in the entire book. In just 1 month, she managed to snatch several orders away from Willow, standing toe-to-toe with her in the business world. But I couldn't shake a lingering unease. Every time I went out, I felt like a pair of eyes were watching me from the shadows. This strange feeling lasted for nearly half a month. One night, while I was coming home late and passing through a secluded alley, a pair of strong arms suddenly dragged me into the darkness. A towel pressed over my mouth. Within seconds, I lost consciousness. When I woke up again, I was lying on a rocky shoreline full of jagged stones. The salty stench of the sea filled my nostrils. Not far off, waves were crashing wildly against the cliffs below. Beside me was the male lead, Makoto. He had also been brought here. His face was practically glowing with excitement. He said, "George, today I'll show you, only I deserve Willow. She'll always choose me." There was a manic glint in his voice, like someone who had taken way too many poisonous mushrooms. I looked at him with disdain. "Seriously, bro? Have you been reading too many big heroine stories and fried your CPU?" Makoto didn't hear me. He was still deep in his own madness. 6 months ago, he pulled the same stunt, staged his own kidnapping, vanished from the world, and everyone thought I was the one behind it. Willow went berserk, screaming at me, "George, why are you so vile? Why do you always go after the person I love?" Everyone believed I was acting out of jealous hatred, that I'd orchestrated the whole thing. After that kidnapping, Willow looked at me with nothing but resentment. And when Makoto was rescued, they held each other like long-lost treasure. But now, The script had gone off track, according to the novel's extra. The wedding was supposed to happen just 1 week after the gala, a perfect fairy tale ending, but it had been a month. And the wedding had been postponed multiple times. Clearly, things weren't so smooth anymore. It was the middle of the night. Stars were scattered across the sky. Waves kept pounding the cliffside tirelessly. A car screeched to a stop nearby. And Willow staggered toward us. The kidnapper grinned wickedly. He yanked me up from the ground and held a knife to my throat. Then he shouted, "You can only choose one. Then transfer 50 million to my account. Once I get the money, I'll let the other one go." Chapter 13. The blade was ice cold against my skin, sending a chill down my spine. I suddenly recalled the moment I got hit by that car. Blood trickling out of me slowly. Body warmth draining as I lay there on the cold, unforgiving road. Willow stood nearby, looking annoyed. She said, "George, do you think staging another kidnapping will get my attention?" She thought this was all my doing, again. A cheap trick to sabotage her and the male lead's love. Maria had just arrived too, wheeled in on her plaster cast-covered legs. She shouted at me, "George, are you insane? It's the middle of the night, are you really making us watch another one of your performances?" She could barely walk, yet still dragged herself out here. Willow's eyes rested briefly on me. Then she looked away and said the answer I had long expected. "You're really pathetic. If you must make me choose, fine. I will only ever choose Makoto." A smug grin appeared on Makoto's lips. He leaned in and whispered triumphantly in my ear, "See, everyone who used to stand by your side, they all choose me now. After this kidnapping, Willow will finally see I'm the one she truly wants to marry. Willow belongs to me." I stared blankly at this crowd of people. A so-called independent, empowered female lead. A love-struck fool of a male lead. A loyal best friend determined to protect their love. I scanned face after face, but there was no sign of the story's greatest villain. Maybe Anna didn't know I'd been kidnapped. The blade was still pressed firmly to my neck. Makoto and Willow were already in each other's arms, crying as if nothing else in the world mattered. They didn't even spare me a glance, confident this performance had no audience left, that I'd quietly leave the stage like a clown without applause. I looked back at the crashing waves beneath the cliff. Not too high. If I jumped, swam half a kilometer, I'd probably make it to shore. The kidnapper kept up his dramatic performance. "Hurry up and get me the 50 million, or I'll, AARGH. A scream tore through the night. He didn't even finish his sentence, because he'd already been shoved over the edge. And just like that, the biggest villain in the book finally made her grand entrance. Chapter 14. Anna saved me. She was clearly shaken, her voice laced with sobs. She choked out, "You didn't come home, you didn't pick up your phone. The food's already gone cold." Her fingertips were covered in blood, as if they'd been scraped rock climbing rocks. Anna explained, "When I first got kicked out of the Sioux family, I used to sit here every day just staring at the sea, so I know this place like the back of my hand. Below the cliff on the right, there's a pile of rocks. You can step on them to climb up, and the sound of the waves can completely drown out your footsteps. So, the villain had been here all along." A faint line of light broke over the distant horizon, piercing through the night's darkness. I wrapped my arms around Anna, in the golden streaks of sunlight slowly rising above the sea. We held each other tightly. Police sirens drew nearer, and the kidnapper's face morphed through an entire slideshow of emotions, from confusion to shock, from shock to fear, then finally to utter panic. He screamed, "Mr. Ito, you said it was just for show, why the hell did you call the cops?" Shaking, the kidnapper pulled out his phone and tried to explain to everyone. "It was Mr. Ito who told me to put on a scene. He paid me 200,000 up front, said I'd get another 300,000 once it was done. Competition's brutal in the waste-picking business lately. Some bastard's been working early and late, completely emptying out all the bins in my neighborhood. So I had to switch jobs and take on a side gig to make ends meet. How could you call the cops?" Waste-picking. That definitely wasn't me. "George." The sun rose higher, lighting up Makoto's pale face in full detail. His legs gave out, and he almost collapsed. He never imagined that this time, Anna would actually call the police. All those past schemes that earned him sympathy and trust were now backfiring. It seems that my arrival in this novel really did patch every plot hole. Even the dumbest storylines suddenly made sense. The salty sea breeze blew across everyone's faces. Willow finally snapped out of her shock. Her eyes locked onto mine, full of guilt, shame, and deep, unrelenting remorse. She reached out her hand and said, "George, I'm sorry. I really thought you were behind all this." So now that the Wang family is bankrupt, her eyesight miraculously works again. The child dies, and suddenly she remembers to show up and cry. Maria, still in her wheelchair, had also been crushed by reality. She couldn't believe the men she'd liked all along. Was this shameless? The police were ready to take the suspect in for questioning. The kidnapper was screaming about his innocence, and in his panic, he actually picked up the knife from the ground and charged straight at Makoto. He roared, "You really thought you could screw me over and let me rot in jail? I'm gonna kill you." The blade was inches from Makoto's neck. He stood frozen in fear, paralyzed. In that split second, Anna and I exchanged a look, then we both kicked hard, right at Maria's wheelchair. The second female lead flew forward, crashing into the kidnapper. They tumbled into a heap, and the knife landed perfectly in Maria's right arm. She saved the male lead, perfectly tied up the last loose end. Her scream rang out again, that same shrill wail I'd grown sick of hearing, drilling into my skull. The police tackled and restrained the attacker. I dusted the sand off my clothes and turned back. Willow was still looking at me with those guilt-ridden eyes. I said, "My head hurts. If we don't settle the emotional damages today, I'm not dropping the charges." She bit her lip and replied, "I really get it now. I won't give him any more money." I sighed. "Actually, you could maybe help him out a little," she said. "No, the truth is out. I won't make the same mistake again," I said. "Fine. I'll ask for less," she replied. "Even if you asked for nothing, I still wouldn't help him." Willow spoke with firm conviction. For the first time since arriving in this world, I lost a negotiation. The money slipped through my fingers. Frustrated, with nowhere to vent, I gave Maria a good kick. She yelped in pain. The once bustling seaside now echoed with the wail of approaching ambulances. No one paid Maria any attention as she struggled to get up. Dragging herself toward the ambulance, she cried out, "Help! I'm the one who called. You can't just leave me behind this time." Chapter 15. The female lead lost her protagonist halo. After a string of failed investments, Liu Corporation's financial chain finally snapped. Once upon a time, the Liu family had faced a similar crisis, but back then, the Wang family bailed them out. Now, she had nowhere to turn. Her wedding with the male lead, Makoto, became a distant dream. When the first autumn arrived after I transmigrated into this book, I was curled up in my office, flipping through Wang Group's financial reports. When my secretary knocked and said, "President Wang, Miss Liu from Liu Corporation is here to see you," I frowned in thought for a moment, then declined the meeting. But Willow must have truly run out of options. She waited stubbornly outside the building, dead set on seeing me. From morning until dusk, everyone in the office was whispering about it. I knew why she'd come. She wanted to negotiate with our company. Rubbing my aching temples, I finally agreed to meet her in the conference room. The once radiant female lead now looked worn and weary. She walked in holding a thick stack of transfer agreements. And when her eyes met my calm, indifferent gaze, she froze on the spot. Moments later, her voice rang with surprise and joy as she asked, "George, this company, you founded it. That's wonderful. If you're willing to hand over control of the finances, then I'll marry you." Her shamelessness honestly impressed me. I had to admit, she really had mastered that whole mantra of everything can be used for my benefit. Reliance doesn't mean lack of independence. I lazily lifted my eyelids and replied, "Hand over control of the finances to you. What? So it's easier for you to run off with the money?" An awkward look spread across Willow's face. She lowered her head and mumbled, "George, everything before was just a misunderstanding. Makoto tricked me. Can we start over?" I frowned. Start over? So my parents' deaths, can we redo those too? In this world, my parents died in a car crash. After the Wang family collapsed, they were on their way to another city for business when the stress caused them to lose focus behind the wheel. They crashed into a guardrail and died on the spot. Honestly, if I had transmigrated just 3 months earlier, I might have been able to stop it. Willow didn't kill them directly, no, but they died indirectly because of her. What I wanted more than anything was to take every penny she had, then send it to the afterlife as tribute to my parents. Willow looked at me, her eyes filled with pain and hope. She said, "George, you still love me, don't you?" I looked up at her, a little hopeful too, and asked, "Do you still have any money?" Willow's smile froze. Her voice dropped. "No. I'm actually a few billion in debt." She had no money and still came to waste my time. I slammed the table hard and snapped, "No money? Then what the hell are you here for? If you don't leave right now, I'll sell you for parts tonight." After Willow was dragged out by security, I carried a bag of fruit and headed to the old Su family estate. After Anna and I dealt with Liu Corporation, no one at Su's dared speak against her again. She reclaimed everything that was rightfully hers. On top of that, the Su family had hired a fortune teller, who claimed Maria's destiny was too soft, said she had the face of a short life full of disaster and hardship. At the old estate, I saw Maria sitting in her wheelchair. When she saw me, her eyes lit up. She asked, "Brother Wang, are you here to see me?" I lifted the apples in my hand and said, I heard your arm still hasn't healed. So I brought some of your sister's favorite apples, came to visit her. Where is she? Maria's head drooped in disappointment. She said, Brother Wang, we'll never go back to how close we used to be, will we? When people are hurting, they always miss the past more. Maria had nothing left now. After Anna took back control of the Su family, her very first move was to kick Maria out of the company. Now Maria sat in her wheelchair, her legs just freshly freed from plaster. Her right arm was still tightly bandaged and slung across her chest due to serious injuries. She looked utterly defeated. I walked over and patted her on the shoulder, comforting her. Sure, you lost everything, but you gained love. Look, your love just arrived. Chapter 16. Makoto showed up at the gates of the Su family estate. That whole fake kidnapping drama. It ended with him in detention for a few days before being quietly let go. But everything he once dreamed of had vanished into thin air. He and the female lead had a massive fight, and eventually went their separate ways. Luckily, the second female lead was still waiting for him. The male lead's biggest regret in the entire novel was about to be mended. I excitedly pulled out a washed apple, took a crunchy bite, and stood by to witness this glorious historical moment, only to see Maria, panicked, using her still functional left arm to push her wheelchair, desperately trying to distance herself from Makoto while screaming in fear, "Don't come any closer." Makoto froze where he stood. "Maria, you're leaving me too," he said. "You once told me you'd stay in the same place and wait for me forever." I burst out laughing. Her legs hadn't even fully healed. Her arm was still broken. She couldn't even manage crutches without help, and she still thought about standing. That fortune teller really was something. He'd once said Maria's fate was cursed. After giving it serious thought, Maria decided that Makoto was her bad luck charm. If she had never met him, she wouldn't have lost everything. Wouldn't have ended up stuck in a wheelchair, faced with a choice between love and survival. The second female lead made the practical choice, which, frankly, I found pathetic. Just then, a pale hand reached into my fruit bag and casually grabbed an apple. I turned around. Anna's smiling face appeared beside me. She asked, "Brother Wang, did you finish counting up the details?" I smiled and nodded slightly. The new company was under my name, and 20% of the Su family shares had become mine. Maria slapped her wheelchair in frustration and shouted, "Brother Wang, what are you counting? I'm part of the Su family too. It's bad enough you're not giving me any shares, why are you hiding everything from me?" Anna rolled her eyes and said, "You calling him Brother Wang now? Next time, try brother-in-law instead." Chapter 17. My arrival had added one last extravagant flourish to a story long since concluded. The so-called century wedding between the male and female lead never happened, but Anna and our wedding came right on schedule. As I held Anna's hand and walked down the aisle, I heard commotion outside the hotel. Makoto burst in, dressed in cheap clothes. His eyes were bloodshot, and the hatred in his stare toward me was seething. He roared, Why did the plot change? I was supposed to marry Willow. George, you were supposed to die alone in a rented room. Anna was supposed to die in that basement. Why are you both still alive?" He'd gone completely mad. Suddenly, he pulled a knife from his sleeve and lunged at me. The guests screamed and scattered. Only Maria, still in her wheelchair, turned pale and panicked. She tried to grab her crutch and flee. Her legs had mostly healed, and with the crutch, she could finally stand again, but she was still too slow. Anna and I exchanged a glance. At the same time, we both grabbed Maria and used her as a human shield. She shrieked, "Eldest brother is like a father. Eldest sister is like a mother. Didn't you two learn any of that? Let me go, you scumbags." The blade plunged into Maria's good arm, her left one. Makoto was dragged off by security. Maria collapsed to the floor, convulsing and sobbing pitifully. "I don't want love anymore. I really don't. Can someone kind please call me an ambulance?" I looked toward the now distant Makoto. In my mind, the pages of the book flipped rapidly to the very last extras, but now, those pages were different. In the revised ending, Willow spent her days sobbing in a basement. One night, drunk out of her mind, she collapsed, clutching her chest, and never got up again. As for Makoto, he was imprisoned for assault. Years later, he got out and rented a moldy attic in an urban village. Eventually, he jumped to his death. My thoughts wandered. Anna tugged at my sleeve, leaned in, and asked, "George, what are you thinking about?" I turned to her. In her eyes, there was life, real, vibrant life. All traces of the past weariness were gone. I kissed her on the forehead. "I was just wondering," I said. "Why do you like apples so much?" She smiled. "Because apples are really tasty."